Welcome back, everybody, to the Behind the Lava Lava podcast. We are Piapoko, Samoan men who want to share our insights on societal topics through our perspective. I'm your host for today, Spencer Harman. I'm joined today with the crew. We got Michael, we got T, we got Johnny, and Ati. Be sure to listen in on our latest episodes. You can catch us on Facebook, Spotify, YouTube, and Instagram. Welcome back. We appreciate anybody who's listening in and cares at all what we have to say on anything. So today we're going to get into one of those topics that's a little similar to the gun control topic, where there's a lot of division on how people take their stances on this. Much like the gun control topic, I just want to have a brief disclaimer that these are our opinions. Like, we speak for ourselves, but while those of us on the podcast here today kind of all share similar perspectives on this, we didn't intentionally set this up so that we're talking in an echo chamber. We are not unempathetic to people who have varying or differing opinions from us, but this is a hot button issue right now. We just wanted to share our thoughts on it. That being said, a lot of things that we're talking about today, we're talking about the repeal of Roe v. Wade. We know that we're going to try to talk about this in two separate categories, because the thing about Roe v. Wade is that it's, of course, dealing with abortion, but we want to talk about our insights of the specific repeal of Roe v. Wade, as well as our stances on abortion. Those can be two different subjects. And of course, there's varying sub-subjects in between all of that. So we're going to keep this as focused as we can. But before we get started on kicking it out to everybody, I also wanted to just address the fact that it's a common notion that we understand what we are. Like I said, we're Piapoko, we're Samoan men, and it's like, as men, we're not able to have a baby. There's a common notion that when it comes to this subject, that we're not even supposed to have an opinion. And so just to address that really quick, this is not me speaking for the rest of the cast, but I've just never felt like that was an insightful point. Because saying that, oh, you're not a woman, so you can't talk about anything that affects women, is like saying, oh, well, if you're not black, you can't talk about any subjects that has to do with black people. You're not brown, you can't talk about any subjects that has to do with brown people. It's like, we're supposed to be coming together as people, like, especially here in the United States. We have a common fabric where we may not all share the same race, share the same religion, etc., but we are all citizens of this country. And so setting up walls and barriers and divisions and saying that everyone just needs to stay in their lane is just one of those things that keeps us separated. And so I do acknowledge that, that we do belong to a category of people that are often rebuked and saying we shouldn't have an opinion on this. Nevertheless, we're going to share it anyway, and we'll hope you give it a listen. And so with that being said, I'd like to kick it to the crew. How would you guys like to go about addressing Roe v. Wade? How do you see it? Where do you stand with the repeal of it, and why?
All right. First of all, let's talk about Roe v. Wade. Roe v. Wade was a court case with 67 or 72 or 78, somewhere around there. It was abortion. A woman, they tried to randomize her name, so it was Roe, Dana Roe, and she wanted to fight against Texas's abortion laws, saying it was unconstitutional. And so Roe v. Wade was a Supreme Court ruling where they ruled in favor that to deny a woman her abortion rights, aside from the extreme cases of health to the mother, it was health to the mother and special circumstances, was illegal. It was unconstitutional to deny an abortion. So they just repealed the Texas state and just made it a ruling. So Roe v. Wade protected abortion. But in doing so, it brought it under the umbrella of the federal government. And so when they repealed Roe v. Wade, essentially they just handed jurisdiction for Roe v. Wade to the states. And the states were allowed to govern the way they deemed fit when it came to abortion. And during that time, it was interesting because I was reading up on it a little bit. I was a criminal justice major. And when we were talking about it in school, and this was a while ago, it was a hot topic because we had a lot of females in my class. And we were jumping around back and forth over abortion rights. But back then, when they were talking about abortion or for Roe v. Wade, they didn't have a clear picture. And so what the Supreme Court did was they created the trimester system. Where do we determine life? And everybody argued that life begins at conception. So when they created the trimester system, then it was like during the first trimester of the pregnancy, you were allowed to, it was feasible to have an abortion performed by a licensed physician who specializes in it in cases of, it was incest, rape, and detrimental health to the mother. And those are like specific cases, and then there was a whole list of it. But they made it unconstitutional for any state to bar a woman's rights to an abortion in the first trimester. And then the second trimester was where it became more, that list got narrowed down, became more specific. And then the third trimester, they were trying to govern. And when they repealed Roe v. Wade and kicked it out to the states, now it was a portion of kind of like back then with the gay marriage clause before the federal government took over. It was like some states allowed it, some states don't. It's like the weed thing now. Some states allow recreational marijuana, other states don't. It's still recognized as illegal in the federal government. But when they repealed Roe v. Wade, I believe the biggest thing that people didn't like about repealing Roe v. Wade was funding. Essentially, that's all it is. Because when it falls under the umbrella of the federal government, it falls under the budget from Congress. Congress will foot the bill, and they will fund whatever program that's required to uphold this ruling. But when they kick it out to the states, now the funding diminishes. Now these programs that they were relying on, probably Planned Parenthood, isn't going to get a lot of the funding that they got from the federal government. Now they're going to rely on donations because some states are for, some states are against. I was always for it, or the repeal of Roe v. Wade, because I wanted it to be a state thing. So even though I believed in, I don't believe abortion is barring very specific circumstances. But when it comes to abortion, it's kind of like a two-party system. So when you say just because I don't have a uterus, I'm not allowed to talk about it, I'm not the one that's carrying this baby. Yeah, but when the baby's born, I have to foot the bill if I'm the father. And yeah, a lot of people say, well, bring something new. That's the same old argument. Yeah, it's the same old argument because it's still relevant. That argument still stands. The child custody laws are just destroying some households. Some men are just getting destroyed by child support, alimony, stuff like that. And they don't get to see their kids, even though they want to be in the lives. And there's so many instances of this happening from toxic women or just evil people do this. It's because it's on both sides. There are some single mothers that get the wrong end of the stick. But if you're going to be held liable for both, then why does the father not get a say? So my thing was, if you hand it down to the states, then it can differ. It's not a blanket law that encompasses all the 50 states and everybody got to adhere to it. And then some states might be more stricter, or some states will stick to the letter of the law. But when you hand it out to the states, then you have options. If you live in a state that is against abortion and you're for abortion, then go move to a state that is for abortion. You got options to move around and still be within the area that you want to be. But ultimately, what it comes down to, and this is my belief, is it's funding. Because now, if your family has a history and you guys all grew up in Texas and all of a sudden you're the one that's against abortion, but hey, guess what? Your state does not. And now you got to move, but you don't want to move because of legacy. Well, sometimes you got to find what's important to you. And so for me, them repealing Roe v. Wade is one of those decisions where finally just give it to the states, because that's an issue that has a lot of differing opinions. And then it gives us Americans, gives y'all Americans, because I'm a national, it gives y'all Americans options to move around. That's just my 2 cents, and 3 and 4.
An American national is still an American. I'll die on that.
Hey, I'm a conquered citizen. So we just do this and collect our checks too.
No, thanks for that. Thanks for sharing that. For me, I'm also on the part where I agree that that Roe v. Wade was rightfully repealed, but for me, I always come at it from the stance of kind of like with the gun control thing. I am not a big fan of government overreach. The federal government weighing in on rights that are not specified in the Constitution is an overreach. People are like, well, we're talking about women's rights. People care more about gun rights than women's rights. And I'm like, well, if you want to conflate the subject of abortion to being only about women's rights, even though 50% of women in this country oppose abortion, it's like, okay, you can make that conflation, but we have to talk about how the specific power to abort a baby is not specified in the Constitution. The right to own a gun actually is. And so it's like, this is a non-argument in that sense. And so for me, any power that is not specified to be given to the federal government in the Constitution does fall under the category of a state's right. And the thing is that well, I obviously have my bias. I'll never lie and say I'm an unbiased person. I don't think it's possible for any person to be truly unbiased, but that's my take on it. But even people who were in the know, who were biased and pro-abortion, knew about the fragility of Roe v. Wade's legality. Was it last year that Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Supreme Court Justice, passed away? And we have all these people that are so sad and upset that she's gone, but I don't know how many truly they should be. Like, she was a great American. But while she was very pro-abortion, she even talked about exactly that. She was upset at how Roe v. Wade was constructed around the protection of privacy for the mother and the fetus. And she said that was not a strong enough argument to hold up. And she was afraid that Roe v. Wade would indeed be repealed because it was poorly written law. For her stance, she thought that it should have fallen under another category as far as like how, if you wanted to be pro-abortion, it can be protected under other means legally. But the way that it was protected under Roe v. Wade under the argument of protection of privacy was not one that could hold up. And so even abortion advocates such as RGB knew about the fragility of its legality.
Yeah, one thing that comes to mind is you've mentioned women's rights. And to me, women's rights is tricky and it's a complicated topic to talk about, because one misstep, or if us men say something wrong, we would be labeled or criticized. We would be told that we're disrespecting our moms, disrespecting our wives and our sisters just because we're voicing our opinions. But I want to bring up who this ruling really impacts. And I think the women of color, especially the black women they're mostly impacted by this decision, because they've reported that black women are more likely to die from childbirth related complications. And the other group of people who are affected by this are people who can't afford an abortion or people who can't afford the help. So for the most part, poor people are affected by this choice. So keeping that in mind, not everyone is affected by this choice, even though you're a woman. To me, women's rights, not every woman is affected by this ruling, because not every woman goes through abortion. Just this appeal kind of leveled the women's rights with the men's rights in some aspects. So those are my thoughts.
Yeah, let me chime in here. Man, this is a topic that I know we've been talking. I remember I talking about this topic since 5th grade when we had our first discourse about this topic. There's always going to be around women's right, men's right, political rights, everything. It's always going to be there. I want to maybe take our discussion a little bit to try to address the biases out there. One bias out there is the reason why maybe this was overturned was because the justices were, I guess, majority justices were Republican or were put in by Republican presidents and less more of the political party that's on it. How do you guys feel about that, considering that's one of the biases out there? Hey, the reason why it was overturned because majority of the justices were Republican or were put in by Republican. How do you guys feel about that? Just to, move on our conversation.
So when you talk about women's rights, in the modern society now, in contemporary society, we advocate for equality through the genders. And I'm a firm believer that maybe not a large majority, but women are capable of doing everything men are capable of doing. Maybe not to the degree, and there might be a little differences in finality with as far as anatomy is concerned. But when it comes to like Bill of Rights and the amendments and stuff like that, I'm a firm believer that we need to do away with the word human right or women's rights. It should be human rights, because at this point in time, we've accepted the sins of the past. We've accepted the errors of trying to differentiate old school. And I say old school with the whole gender roles. Now, gender roles are more diverse. We have a lot of stay-at-home fathers. We have a lot of career women. And they're still talking about the wage gap. But I believe now is the time we should start leaning more into human rights, because as far as, and when they were talking about the language, and I know Spence was talking about the legality of the language with Roe v. Wade and women's privacy rights, it was, a lot of it had to do with when they were talking about how with abortion, the Constitution protects the woman or both parties, but it also, in technicalities, it protects the fetus as well. So that's why they tried to come up with the trimester system, so they could have a clear picture of when they can consider it a fetus, so they can prove when does life begin, conception. And with the language, a fetus is protected because the way it's written, they use the word persons. And so persons includes both genders and the fetus as well. So when it comes to the argument of abortion and all this stuff, when is life constituted? When is a woman allowed to abort? Is every fetus has a right to live? And what Perez posted a little earlier with the whole woman arguing to be in the HOV lane because she was pregnant. And technically, the HOV bylaws say 2 plus persons. So when you're nitpicking legality, it just comes down to trying to nitpick the situation. And I believe that as we move forward as a society, we need to start accepting the faults and start using a generalized term as human. When you say women's rights, it's just regular human rights. It just happens to apply to a female. Human rights, it just happens to apply to a transgender male or cisgender or whatever. I got nothing against LGBTQ, but you're entitled to what you want to believe, but you still are human by species. And so if we could just stick to that kind of language, and we'll be fine.
I definitely agree with that. I'm going to talk about that, but I also wanted to address what Ati put out as well. Just talking about, I do, because people do point out with the Roe v. Wade was repealed by Republican justices or justices appointed by Republican presidents. I'm like, to me, that's a bit inconsequential because there's no mystery what parties these people have been affiliated with, like their entire lives leading up until this point. And that's why I said earlier, I don't believe that it's possible for a person to be truly unbiased, but these Supreme Court justices are supposed to be appointed because of their devotion to upholding the Constitution of the United States, regardless of party. And if we're going to keep flaunting the parties of these justices, then it's like, well, I'm guessing that's always going to be a factor. But obviously, they have gone this far in their careers while having the party affiliations they do, and they are affiliated with those parties because they hold to the values of those parties. But let's not pretend that every decision they make is exactly cut and dry like that. But in the case of Roe v. Wade, it is. And that just goes to show how divisive this topic is. But going back to what you were saying, Johnny, I think talking about human rights, that gets to the core as to what I get to when it comes to where I stand on not just Roe v. Wade, but abortion in general. Because to me, there is only, I am not a law scholar. I am not highly educated in the law. I just try to keep up on what I can, but we have a news cycle that runs every day that to consume all the news that's put out in a single day, you probably need a good week or so to catch up with just that one day. And then you'll be another week behind everything else that happens since. So it's almost impossible to keep up with every changing viewpoint for law and for political stuff. But that's why, to me, identifying what values you hold as an individual is what's going to inform your decisions, as things come, because I don't have to sit there and think well, where do I stand on this letter of the law and this and that? If you have those mental faculties, I applaud you. But because we have lives to live, we're not able to keep up with every tiny piece of information. It's easier for me to just appeal to my values. And so that's why, to me, when it comes to abortion and anything surrounding it, it boils down to one question. When is the fetus considered a human life? Because the moment that you identify it as human life, to me, there's no question whether or not you can abort it, because our founding documents of this country are based on the idea that we have what we call inalienable rights. The inalienable rights, in the language of our founding documents, are bestowed upon us by our Creator. Meaning, and that doesn't mean that it's only a religious interpretation of these rights. That just means that by virtue of being a human being, you have specific rights. Not by virtue of being an American, and our documents specify that these are not rights that are granted to you by the government, but that the government's duty is to protect these rights that were granted by the Creator, that they're endowed by the Creator. So what are those rights? Life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. So life is the very first right that we name that is endowed to you by virtue of being a human being. So that's why I say the one question that has to be answered is, when is the fetus a human life? First trimester, second, third. When the minute that you say it's a human life, it is protected. That's an inalienable right that the government has a responsibility to protect. So, of course, that means that there are a lot of people, that there are women that are affected by this, and the biggest gravity of that situation falls on them. And I will not pretend that that's not the case. While men get repercussions as well, I'm not going to pretend that we have the biggest weight of that ruling. But it's one of those things where I've heard a phrase like, do you err on the side of caution or do you err on the side of life? What is the worst case scenario for either way? The worst case scenario on one side, you force a woman to go through labor, which I know is a difficult thing, something that I cannot relate to. But the worst case scenario on the other side is you kill an innocent person. So I err on the side of life in that case. And so that's why, if you want to have a conversation on when is it considered a human life, because everyone's like, oh, it's just a clump of cells. Well, technically a clump of cells is life, but it's human life that gets human rights. And so that's where that line has to be drawn. And because we're always moving that line. Is it at a heartbeat? Is it at the development of a central nervous system? Is it at, nowadays we have extreme measures where people don't want to consider it a human life until it is out of the womb. And it's like, that's ridiculous. And so I'm like, I can't draw that line. And so I'll go as far back as like moment of conception, sure. But if you want, I'll even work with you a little bit on that. Not saying that, because to me, it's a human life at the moment of conception. But like I said, I am not the greatest legal mind. I can't draw these lines distinctly. And so that's where the conversation has to take place in regards to abortion as a general concept. But
well, what do you think the court of the public opinion will be 20 years from now? Because
good question.
Essentially, you hear the phrase changing with the times. We evolve with the times. As back then, Kota Hammurabi with eye for an eye was considered acceptable, and now it's considered cruel and inhumane punishment. So what about in 20 years? Will conception be, or will life begins outside, able to sustain itself, as in first breath? Or do we go back to where, the sperm cell's got a little tail that moves on its own motor function? That could be considered life. Cell splits, divides, that's considered life. What do you call the powerhouse of a cell? But it's all life.
Mitochondria.
Right. Well, that's the real question, because it's like, where were we 20 years ago? The party that was advocating for the legalization of abortion was like, the Hillary Clinton phrase was safe, legal, rare. Safe, and that was meant to be the compromise stance on it, saying it's safe, so we make it legalized so that doctors will provide a safe environment to perform the operation. And it's legal, so you can't come after the doctor or the mother over whether or not they were allowed to do that. But rare, acknowledging that there is a moral conundrum attached to this, and that it should not be something that's encouraged. Fast forward 20 years, and they're saying, no, we want it anytime, anywhere, on the taxpayer's dime, up until the moment of birth. And we even have some politicians that have even said, you know what, we can deliver the baby, set it aside, make it comfortable, and have a conversation with the mom whether or not she wants to keep it or not. I'm like, at that point, it's not even your body, your choice. It's not even in your body now.
Yeah.
But
I think
so
at one point, for the longest time, it was up to like 17 weeks until it's fully developed, the fetus. And then that's when I think the government can then intervene. I think it was second or third trimester. But the first trimester, that's where I believe the privacy starts, where it was only between the women and the provider. If she wanted to, i.e., get an abortion at that point, the privacy or HIPAA laws provided that protection for her. But then right after that second, third trimester, that's when the government can then intervene at that point. And that's what majority of the advocates for Roe versus Wade, they wanted that still to be intact. Unfortunately, during that time, when I believe this was passed, there were it was a wave of human rights, especially for women during that time, i.e. the reason why it went the way it went, the decision, was because there was tons of publicity especially from the feminism side of the political spectrum, those guys all the way on that side. So just to go off of that question, nowadays, 20 years from now, or I don't know, maybe 40 or 30, I think we're not even going to be arguing abortion. We're going to be arguing about I-8, are they going to be, or I-8s are going to be human or not? Should we kill or, Terminator type things? That's pseudoscience a little bit, but unfortunately we're going in that way considering the way, what's his name, the Tesla guy has been talking about. I got his name, but anyways, yeah. So
Elon Musk is going to turn on Skynet.
Yeah.
So there's something that I wanted to bring up because it affects us men. After the appeal, there was about a 300 to 400 increase in number of men who went and got vasectomy consultations. What are you guys' thoughts on this? And would you guys get a vasectomy because of this whole situation? I know for me, I don't think it's necessary because there are many ways to prevent having a baby. If you don't want a baby, just wrap it before you tap it. That's what we were told in the military.
Abstinence, man. Abstinence.
No, for real.
Like snipping my nuts.
Abstinence.
That's part of that safety brief, man.
Be gay.
I'm just saying it like me being anti-abortion, like I've got to just be like, okay, you know what? If that's your only solution to keep you from getting women pregnant, do it, because that's been my stance for a while. I'm not saying I'm gonna do it, but I've probably been too inactive to be a factor in this. But like the thing is like when it comes to having a stance with being anti-abortion, it's like I never like the framing of pro-choice or pro-life because I do believe in choice. I believe in 4 choices: abstinence, contraception, adoption, and motherhood. It's like there's 4 choices. I just want to take off of the table the one that involves killing another human being. So, dude, if you got to go that far to get that snip to keep you from having babies, more power to you. Just make it so that you don't have to put women in that position where they're considering killing a baby. It's like, do your part. So, salute.
Just real quick, I don't really think my opinion matters at all. I think every circumstance is different, every case is different, and it's up to whatever parties are involved. But we can all agree, those of us who have children, that opens up a different type of love you didn't know you could have. So when we present a scenario, let's say those of us who have daughters, they ended up with an unwanted pregnancy, and then they come to you and they want an abortion, or someone who has a son, his daughters or his girlfriends wanting to get an abortion. Let's say in the case for your daughters, it was sexual assault, rape. Like, I like to believe that the presence of life would make me put everything aside and just love the baby like I love my own. But at the same time, would you support your daughter or try to change your mind? Would you hold a grudge against the assailant? What would your feelings be on that matter in that case?
I think you hit at the heart of like one of the most important things to talk about in the subject of abortion, is especially in cases of rape and incest, because I would absolutely like to take abortion off the table completely, but I would be willing to make that compromise, because look, compromise means that not every side gets everything they want. You give a little to get a little. I would be willing to say, look, all abortions off the table except for in cases of rape and incest. Problem is that only accounts for, I believe last time I checked the numbers, like 8% of total abortions completely.
It's less than that. Less than that.
Like 92, 95% of all abortions are done out of convenience. But in that case, it's like I said, I'll call it on that, like, because that's a horrible scenario that no one should be in. And I am completely empathetic to the mother. And I would hope she would make that choice to carry it out, put it up for adoption if that's what she wants. But I would even be willing to cave on that, to be like, that's a scenario where I'd be like, okay, it's legal there. But that would be taking that as a compromise. I still would prefer it was taken off the table completely, but I would even give in on that specific scenario. But that's one of those scenarios that's waved around for the pro-abortion crowd as if that's every abortion. It's not even 92%, 95% of that's not even like 5%, 8% of why people get abortions. So
that falls in line with the same argument of you take the most extreme cases and you portray it as it applies to a large majority. And it's even written in the language. It's written in the language that it's barring specific scenarios, and it's posted rape, incest, and health of the mother. Like it's already written in the language. So when you try to take the small portion or the most extreme cases and apply it as a blanket statement saying it's the vast majority, all you're saying is that you want to hold on to the option because this is your excuse to make it available for everybody. And I'm not saying it's for or against when it comes to abortion, because sometimes the right to an option makes people feel better. Some people like to have options available. They like, well, what in case, and then in case of this, and then going off of what you said specifically, I have 4 daughters, and my daughters I got teenagers now. And I've already had this conversation with them, because for as much as I don't want them to go out and be sexually active, I understand that as a youth, that myself, stuff happens. But I've always told them that if something happens, you wound up pregnant, bring it to me. If you don't want the baby, I'll take the baby. It's fine with me. But at the same time, yes, there is a moral dilemma when it comes to cases of rape and incest. And so I don't know how I'd act, but would the option be available? Right now, I like to have the options, but at the same time, there is a conundrum, because I still believe in that every human life is precious, especially as a child. Every child life is precious. So regardless of the situation, if I have to own that, then I'll take the kid, regardless of the situation. But at the same time, this is unique to me. This is my situation. For me to compare my life experience and my household rules and my cultural values and blanket that to the rest of everybody in the United States is selfish. So it's one of those open-ended statements, but still, I'm still a firm believer that you shouldn't take extreme cases as a talking point to defend a majority. It's just not right.
Thanks for sharing that. Thanks for putting that out, T. So I just want to thank everybody for giving your thoughts and insights on this. Like, I know this is a very tiny discussion for what is a broad and complex case, but it's just our thoughts and the length of what we could put into an episode. But I want to thank anybody for joining us, especially if you disagree with us on any of this. Thank you especially for hearing us out. If you want to get back to us, if you want to offer us some feedback, if you want to offer any future ideas for just things you'd like us to discuss, or if you yourself would like to even get in on this and give us a little pushback on the air, contact us. So you can find us, remember, Behind the Lava Lava on Spotify, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Thank you all for joining us. And
TikTok,
and we're working on the OnlyFans, so just stand by. But appreciate you all. Much love to everybody. We'll catch you on the next episode, Behind the Lava Lava. Don't fuck.